What makes a person stand firm against an unstoppable wave of change? Imagine this: your homeland, the place where your ancestors' bones rest, is invaded. Your culture, the songs, the dances, the beliefs that define you, is threatened with erasure. Your future hangs in a fog of uncertainty. What would you do? Would you fight to the end, clutching every shred of your identity, or surrender everything to the tide? Today we step into the world of the Sioux, Cheyenne, Iroquois, Navajo, Comanche, and Apache-nations, whose stories aren't just carved into dusty history books, but echo across time with pride, defiance, and resilience. Take a deep breath and imagine the Great Plains in the year 1300. Endless grasslands sway under a relentless wind, stretching out like an ocean of green and gold as far as the eye can see. The ground trembles with the thunder of galloping horses, their hooves kicking up clouds of dust, while the rhythmic beats of sacred drums rise from campfires under a starlit sky. This was the realm of the Sioux, a people united under the Osidi-Sakowin, the Seven Council Fires. This alliance bound together tribes like the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, each speaking a distinct yet related tongue. Dakota in the east, Lakota in the west, and Nakota bridging the two. Their lives revolved around the buffalo, the shaggy giants that roamed the plains in herds numbering in the thousands. The Sioux were master hunters, tracking these beasts with bows and spears, their survival tied to the ebb and flow of the animals' migrations. The Sioux people lived in taipas, portable cone-shaped shelters made from buffalo hides, which could be quickly assembled or taken down as they followed buffalo herds. Inside, a fire provided warmth and carried prayers to the Great Spirit, Wakantanka. The introduction of horses by the Spanish in the 16th century transformed their way of life. The Sioux warriors, called Akachita, became highly skilled on horseback, using their lances to protect their sacred land, which they believed was a divine gift. Just beyond the Sioux's domain, the Cheyenne roamed the same sweeping plains, their lives intertwined with the buffalo as well. Like their neighbors, they lived in teepees, their camps a constellation of hide-covered homes dotting the grasslands. The Cheyenne were a spiritual people, their nights filled with the haunting melodies of songs and the hypnotic steps of dances like the sun. Dance, a grueling ritual where warriors pierced their flesh with skewers, offering their pain to the spirits for strength and renewal. Their horsemen were feared in battle, wielding bows with deadly accuracy, while their women crafted intricate quillwork, adorning clothing with patterns that told stories of their past. The Cheyenne's resilience was rooted in their unity, a bond forged by shared hardships and a deep reverence for the land they called home. To the east, across the dense woodlands and shimmering lakes of northeastern North America, the Iroquois rose as a different kind of power. Picture towering oaks and maples, casting long shadows over fertile soil. This was their domain. Bound by the great law of peace, the Iroquois Confederacy united 5 nations: Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, later joined by the Tuscarora in the 18th century. Unlike the nomadic Sioux and Cheyenne, the Iroquois built longhouses, massive wooden structures stretching up to 200 feet, their bark-covered roofs sheltering dozens of families under one roof. Inside, fires burned along a central corridor, smoke rising through holes in the ceiling as clans gathered to share meals and stories. They were farmers, tending fields of corn, beans, and squash, the 3 sisters that sustained their people. But their true genius lay in governance. Their council system, where chiefs debated and decided as equals, was so advanced that some scholars argue it influenced the framers of the Pointe Constitution centuries later. The Iroquois weren't just survivors, they were architects of order in a chaotic world. In the Southwest, the Navajo carved a life from the unforgiving red rock and dust of what's now Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Their days began with the sun rising over jagged mesas, casting golden light on fields of corn, beans, and squash they coaxed from the arid soil with clever irrigation ditches. They herded sheep and goats across rugged hills, their wool woven into blankets so vivid they seemed to capture the colors of the desert itself: deep reds, bright yellows, and cool blues. Their homes, called hogans, were circular shelters of logs and mud, their domed roofs blending seamlessly into the earth. Each hogan faced east, welcoming the dawn in a quiet ritual of gratitude. The Navajo, or Dine, weren't warriors by nature, but their resilience in this harsh land spoke of a strength as enduring as the cliffs that surrounded them. Farther south, across the rolling grasslands and sun-baked hills of Texas and Oklahoma, the Comanche ruled as unrivaled horsemen. Picture a camp alive with motion, warriors sharpening lances tipped with flint, women tanning buffalo hides into soft leather, and children racing bareback on ponies, learning the art of the saddle from the cradle. After adopting horses from Spanish settlers in the 17th century, the Comanche became a force of nature, their raids as swift as lightning, their dominion stretching across a vast empire they called Comancheria. They hunted buffalo with breathtaking precision, their arrows finding targets from galloping steeds. But they weren't just hunters, they were conquerors, clashing with tribes like the Apache and later Spanish settlers to control trade routes and grazing lands. To the Comanche, the horse wasn't just a tool, it was a sacred companion, amplifying their fearless spirit into a legend that struck terror into their enemies. And in the rugged mountains and hidden valleys of the Southwest, from Arizona to New Mexico, the Apache thrived as elusive shadows. Their homes were wickiups, simple shelters of branches and hides, quick to build and quicker to abandon as they moved with the seasons. They were hunters and gatherers, tracking deer through pine forests and harvesting agave from desert slopes, their lives a dance with the land's rhythms. Apache warriors trained from youth, their bodies lean and swift, their eyes sharp as the obsidian blades they carried. Under leaders like Cochise and later Geronimo, they became masters of guerrilla warfare, striking with precision and vanishing into the wilderness. The Apache saw the earth as sacred, every rock and river a piece of their story, fueling a resolve that would soon be tested by an encroaching storm. Then, everything changed. European ships pierced the horizon, bringing guns, disease, treaties written in deceit, and wars that left scars across generations. At first, many tribes welcomed the immigrant with cautious curiosity. The Sioux traded furs with French explorers in the 17th century, gaining iron tools and firearms in return. But as settlers pushed westward in the 19th century, cooperation turned to conflict. The U.S. government forced agricultural treaties on the Sioux, demanding they abandon their nomadic ways for fenced fields, a betrayal of their identity as children of the plains. Their sacred lands were carved away, and they were herded onto reservations. Yet, in 1876, the Sioux, alongside the Cheyenne and Arapaho, delivered a stunning blow at Little Bighorn. Led by visionaries like Sitting Bull and warriors like Crazy Horse, they annihilated General Custer's forces, a triumph that shook the nation. But the victory was fleeting. U.S. retribution soon stripped them of most remaining territory. The Cheyenne stood shoulder to shoulder with the Sioux at Little Bighorn, their horsemen charging through chaos to secure that historic win. Once lords of the plains, they too watched their freedom erode as settlers and soldiers closed in, their buffalo herds dwindling under the guns of outsiders. To the east, the Iroquois played a masterful game of diplomacy with the French and British during the colonial wars of the 17th and 18th centuries. They balanced alliances, trading furs and fighting as mercenaries, hoping to preserve their sovereignty. But when the American Revolution erupted, their unity fractured. Some sided with the British, others with the rebels. In the end, the new American nation swallowed their lands, piece by piece, leaving the once mighty Confederacy a shadow of its former self. The Navajo faced their own crucible in the Southwest. Though not detailed in early conflicts here, their clash with the U.S. came to a head with the Long Walk of 1864, a brutal forced march of thousands to Bosque Redondo, where hunger and despair claimed countless lives. Yet, their spirit endured. In World War, the second Navajo men rose as code talkers, crafting an unbreakable code from their language that baffled enemy ears and saved Allied lives, a quiet victory born from centuries of resilience. The Comanche, once unchallenged rulers of the South, faced an enemy they couldn't outride. As settlers spread across Texas and Oklahoma, and hunters slaughtered buffalo herds by the millions, their lifeline frayed. Quanah Parker, their last great chief, led fierce raids against encroaching forces before guiding his people into a new era on reservations, an adaptation born of necessity, not defeat. And the Apache fought to the bitter end. Under Cochise in the 1860s and Geronimo in the 1870s and 80s, they waged a relentless war against U.S. troops. Geronimo, a name now synonymous with resistance, evaded capture for years, striking from canyons and peaks with a handful of warriors. But even his genius couldn't halt the tide. His surrender in 1886 marked the end of organized indigenous resistance in the American West, a final stand etched into history. Yet, despite everything disease, displacement, and defeat these nations endure, the Sioux and Cheyenne's victory at Little Bighorn remains a blazing testament to their courage, a memory that sustained them through the loss of their lands. The Iroquois left a legacy of governance, their ideas whispering through the halls of American democracy. The Navajo turned their language into a shield, their code talkers a symbol of ingenuity and survival. The Comanche's horsemanship lives in tales of a lost empire, their spirit unbroken even in submission. And the Apache, through Cochise and Geronimo, became icons of defiance, their tenacity a fire that still burns, their languages persist in songs sung by elders, their traditions in dances under open skies, their spirits in the resilience of modern native communities fighting for recognition and rights. The world may have reshaped the land plains plowed into fields, forests felled for cities, but it has not erased the people who first called it home.